Hello, my friends. Welcome back to Meerkat Musings. Welcome back to a bunch of deep thoughts this morning on the topic of American politics. So I ask that you bear with me here. I'm talking in particular about age and ageism, perhaps in some respects, and the question as to how old is too old to remain in the political game, and are we at a point where that's the case with one or two high-profile individuals? And you can probably guess where I'm going with this. So recently, Joe Biden, the current US president, had a debate with his Republican challenger Donald Trump, and the debate did not go very well if you happen to be a Democrat supporter. Biden seemed somewhat, shall we say, disheveled, perhaps, and sort of struggled, really. And he put this down to, among other things, jet lag and feeling tired from travelling. But nonetheless, he did struggle. And unfortunately for him, he struggled very publicly, in front of the entire country and indeed the world. So this, of course, has raised questions, not for the first time, about Joe Biden's age. He is 81, which there's no two ways around it. In most circumstances, we will class that as elderly, and in most circumstances, people tend to retire from work. Well, I mean, in the USA, the retirement age is either 66 or 67, depending upon when you were born. So Biden has comfortably exceeded the recommended retirement age for most people. And an argument can be made that maybe he's now too long in the tooth for the rigours of political office. After all, we're talking about a pressure cooker environment here. I mean, there's all the stuff that we visibly see that a political leader has to deal with. And there will, of course, be a whole bunch of stuff behind the scenes, security threats and that kind of stuff that we don't see, which is another layer of pressure upon a politician, upon a political leader. So all of this is going on, and certainly in terms of defending his position, so to speak, Biden has raised more questions than he has answers. Some would argue that's unfair. They would say, look at his record in government and judge him based on that. But politics, and in particular US politics, does love a bit of theatre, and it loves a bit of drama. And the Republicans are, of course, seizing upon this in no uncertain terms. And they're no doubt delighted to have the chance to turn the narrative into Biden being old and frail, rather than looking at the political record, rather than looking at the government record. It's an easy win for the Republicans and for Trump. Or is it? Because Donald Trump himself has shown his own signs of a few cognitive issues. And it's worth noting that he himself is 77. He is not exactly a young man, and there are question marks around his fitness as well. So neither side necessarily can say that they're fielding, a robust, fit, raring-to-go candidate to be President of the United States for another 4 years. And this isn't just a problem that you have with presidential candidates, because if you look at, for example, the US Senate, the average age of the US Senate is 64. So, on average, most senators are actually more or less approaching retirement age. And whilst some will obviously be younger because it's an average, some are older. Mitch McConnell who is the Republican leader, I believe, in the Senate, is 82. So, and you know what? He has shown some strange behaviour of late. He's had a couple of high-profile moments where he's just frozen on camera, as it were, and just who knows what was happening there. But that's another kind of perhaps worrying sign of cognitive and mental decline. And these are the people that are in charge of American politics. Now, you could argue that with age comes experience and wisdom, and there is an argument to be made along those lines. But it's also fair to say that right now, the US political arena is stacked with people who are, let's face it, elderly. And you have to draw a question as to whether or not they're A, fully capable, and B, are they simply clinging on to power for power's sake? Are they stifling the next generation that wants to come through? And can there be any fundamental change whilst they're still sticking around? And there's a whole host of other questions and queries that we can spring from all of this as well. Would you say, that if someone is, say, 65 and they are a police officer or firefighter, you might sort of think that's a lot to expect from someone of that age in that kind of job. And indeed, some job roles actually do have an age cap whereby you're then forced to take retirement. Commercial airline pilots and air traffic controllers have to retire at the required retirement age, or in some cases they retire at 65. But that's mandatory because it's deemed too risky to put someone in increasingly advancing years into situations like that where you're responsible for human lives. The same thing goes for firefighters as well. They reach 65 and it's deemed too risky to have them there. It's risky to themselves, it's risky to their colleagues, it's risky to to the people they're trying to save. There's an inevitability about aging, and it's something that we all must face. We all must confront the fact that as we get older, our minds and our bodies do not respond in quite the same way that they used to. It's an uncomfortable reality, but it is reality nonetheless. And it's not to say that, older people can't still contribute greatly to society, because they can. And there are, some job fields where you would say it's absolutely fine to let them sort of carry on. I mean, just as an example, if someone's working as a 9-to-5 office worker, then can they carry on going after, retirement age? Absolutely. As long as they're, still producing the quality of work in whatever they're doing, I think a lot of people wouldn't really object to that. If they choose to do it, if they're happy to do it, and if they're still good at it, then that's fine. But there is, of course, a huge difference in terms of pressure between that kind of thing and, say, being a firefighter or being in air traffic control. And there's an even bigger difference between that kind of role and serving in the highest positions of political office, where you are responsible for governing a country and therefore responsible for, in the case of the USA, hundreds of millions of lives. Not to mention, of course, the global ramifications that the USA often has upon the rest of the world through its policies. So there's a big difference with those things. I've actually explored these thoughts in an upcoming blog post, but I wanted this has been bubbling away on my mind, and as is the case with me sometimes, it's the sort of thing I just kind of need to put out there in video form. And here I am pondering these questions and these thoughts. And I would of course be very curious to know what my listeners think and get your thoughts. Would you say Biden is too old now? Is he hurting the Democrat cause by by so dogmatically refusing to step down, is it maybe unfair to judge him on the basis of his age? Is the kind of media circus actually creating hysteria where it doesn't need to exist? Is that a problem? Are they examining Biden very, very heavily on this issue, but not maybe looking at Trump's own, as I say, cognitive malfunctions in recent times? And is there just, generally speaking, a problem with older people kind of stifling the US political scene by clinging on to their seats of power way longer than they perhaps should? There were questions about capability as you get older, of course. All of this stuff is it's challenging stuff. It's difficult thoughts, and loitering in the back of all of this is, as I say, the reality for all of us at some point that we have to confront. We're all getting older. I mean, for me personally, I would like not to consider myself as being old, but I'm not a young man anymore. I'm not. I was never particularly fit, as it were, but I was certainly fitter in my 20s than I am now in my early 40s, and it's sort of scary because I can sort of see it on my face. I have grey hairs now, where obviously I didn't when I was 21, and so, as I say, loitering in the back of all of these thoughts are the thoughts around our own abilities and my own, I guess, mental and physical power, and how that is changing as I get older, how there's this inescapable reality that we all must face. And face it we must. And that's where you have to wonder, is Joe Biden facing that reality? Is Donald Trump facing that reality? Is Mitch McConnell, are any of those in the US Senate who are, beyond retirement age, are they facing reality? Are they clinging to something that's now actually truthfully gone? And what are the consequences for the world when you see that unfold in the political arena? So, those are my thoughts. Those are my questions. Let's see what people think.